Anyway, recreational pond management. Next slide, please. I get a lot of calls, and I can probably lump all 99% of my calls in these 6 categories. And we'll just start with the first one, construction and leaky ponds. Next slide. You've got to build these ponds right to begin with. This is a pond in Marengo County, and it was about 35 acres. And we got one of these 100-year storms, and the dam was jeopardized because the owner, this was the original spillway, the owner let the spillway get clogged up, and there was no way for the water to rapidly evacuate that pond. So the water ended up going over the top of the dam. And when the water goes over the top of the dam, you're going to lose a pond. Next slide. This is what happened to it. Another thing that happened, this standpipe right here was way too small for that size of a pond. Next slide. This is the back side of the dam. All right, and he lost 35 acres of water in a matter of hours, okay, because it wasn't built right. Next slide. So do it right the first time. You've got to look at soils, you got to size your spillways right, size your pipes, and follow good construction techniques. A lot of people think they can build a pond with a bulldozer. Can't do that. Bulldozers don't have enough compaction ability. You think a bulldozer is pretty heavy, but because we use these tractor pans can hold about 8 yards of dirt, each one of these, and you've got skinny wheels on the tractor pans, and so there's a lot of pressure there. And so that's where you get your compaction. If you build the pond in really dry weather, the clay in the soil is not going to compact. So you have to follow good construction techniques. And the NRCS can give you some limited assistance. They're not really geared right now to pond construction, but you might be able to get some assistance from them. Leaky ponds, I get a lot of calls about leaky ponds. Of course, build it right the first time, get out proper soils. If you can go out to a pond site and make a dough ball, and that dough ball stays in shape like a dough ball, then you probably have enough clay. But if you try to crumble it up and it falls apart, you don't have enough clay for a pond. Some folks think they can seal a pond up with bentonite. The bentonite available in this area is not the right kind of bentonite. If you freight in the right kind of bentonite, you're going to end up spending about $3,500 an acre. Okay? And the only way to put that bentonite out correctly is to drain the pond completely dry, put it out there in a layer, and sheep's foot it in. So build it right the first time. Next slide. Here's the soils map for Alabama. Generally speaking, if you've got a pond site in the Black Belt area of Alabama, you're going to have enough clay. We've also got some floodplain areas in limestone valleys, and that will work. We've got some few areas down here. Now, if you get down in Baldwin, Mobile County, you're going to run into a lot of sand. So make sure you do some cores, some soil cores before you build a pond. Next slide. Liming fish ponds. Those of you that are on the bus tour, yesterday I kind of went into this in detail. We use an alkalinity test. We don't worry about pH, we don't worry about hardness, we worry just mainly about alkalinity when it comes to liming a pond. You've got to have 20 parts per million alkalinity to allow the fertilizer to work in the pond. Also, if your pond is very, very soft, say less than 10 parts alkalinity, the fish don't do as well. I work at a fish lab in Greensboro, and generally if sick fish come in from outside the Black Belt area, usually low lime or low alkalinity is a culprit. But the fish, when you go to a hospital, they give you an IV, okay? And that IV is a saline solution. And in the fish culture business, we try to make the fish swim in an IV solution. All right, when your fish are swimming in an IV solution, there's less stress. So we try to get the salt and the alkalinity up where the fish have got less stress. But anyway, just remember, if your alkalinity is less than 20, you need to lime the pond. And now Auburn can give you a recommendation on that, and usually I like to recommend that you double their recommendation, because when you get a consultant out there with a barge, a line barge, a lot of that expense is just getting them there and getting the equipment there. And if he can go ahead and double the amount of lime, the lime is pretty cheap compared to his services. So go ahead and double that recommendation. That way you won't have to do it as often. The best way to apply the lime is before it's filled with water. And if you need to lime a pond after it's already full of water, you can drive the lime spreader truck from the co-op and just have the driver drive back and forth on the dam along the sides of the pond if you can. But if the pond's larger than 3 acres, you really need to hire a consultant line barge to put it out. What you're trying to do is you're trying to think of the mud as a magnet. And that lime is going to make that magnet neutral. And in that way, when you fertilize the water, the fertilization can stay in the water and not get soaked up by that magnet or soaked up by that mud. All right. Next slide. So why do we fertilize? Well, you've got a food web out there, a food chain. And that initial step, or the initial kink in that chain is your algae. And then you've got little zooplankton that feed on that algae. And then you've got insects and other larger invertebrates that feed on that zooplankton stuff. And then you got your baby fish, your fry, that come along and feed on that. And then you've got your predator fish, like your bigger brim, and the bass feeding on those fish. So it's all a food chain. And the first step in that is fertilization for the algae. Okay, and then at the top of the food chain is either an alligator or a fisherman. Okay, next step. So before you fertilize a pond, you need to assess, well, how many fish am I going to eat out of this pond? How many family and friends do I have? Okay. If you just want clear water, you know, and you want it for swimming. I had a lady, I guess in the group yesterday, she wanted clear water for swimming purposes. If you have light fishing pressure, say 10 pounds of bass and 100 pounds of brim per acre. Now remember, some of you folks have got 20, 30 acre ponds. That's a lot of fish. Is a family of 4 going to eat all those fish? You maybe don't have to fertilize. Okay? If you got medium fishing pressure, 15, 20 pounds of bass, 150 pounds of brim per acre, and real heavy fishing pressure, you might have to plan on 25 pounds of bass and 200 pounds of brim. So if you plan on a really heavy fishing pressure, you need to use a maximum fertilization rate of roughly 1 gallon of fertilizer per every acre for every 3 weeks. But if you're not going to be fishing that much, just very little amount of fertilizer or no fertilizer. You can also have the option of feeding the fish. If I had a pond, a private pond, this is what I would do. I would feed brim in there with a floating catfish feed, because I like to catch brim more than I do bass. I like huge brim when I go fishing. And then I would have a slot limit on the bass. My slot limit would be all the bass that I catch at less than 14 inches, I kind of thin them out. And all the bass greater than 20 inches, I occasionally take those out of the pond. But I leave the ones in there between 14 and 20 inches. And then what those bass are going to do is they're going to eat all your intermediate bluegills and make the surviving bluegills bigger. All right. I never run into a situation where the brim are crowded. I always run into situations where the bass are crowded. All right. We don't take enough bass out of these lakes. Next slide. So the fertilization schedule, it typically starts in March and it goes all the way through September, and you need fertilizer every 3 to 4 weeks. So that's going to be 7 to 9 applications. And this fertilization thing is going to get in your pocket. The last time I checked, a gallon of fertilizer was $5.30 a gallon. That was 6 months ago, so it's probably over $6 a gallon now. So 1 acre of fertilization in a year is going to cost you about $50. So you have to ask yourself, am I going to eat that much fish? Those of you that are on the tour, you got to see my Seeky disc, and that's a great tool to determine whether you need fertilizer or not. All it is a stick with like a 5-gallon plastic lid on it, a white lid, and you lower it down in the water, And if you can see that lid between 18 and 24 inches of water, your bloom is in good shape. You got good green color of the pond. If you can lower that lid into the water and you can see it, say 36 inches down, you don't have hardly any bloom, you might want to fertilize. All right, if that disc disappears in 4 inches of water, you got a catfish pond. You've got to aerate. You're going to have an algae die off. So we don't ever want your recreational ponds to get really, really green, all right, because you're going to have oxygen problems. The catfish farmers know how to work with that because they have aerators. Next slide. Weeds, I get a lot of weed questions. This is actually a oil can. I was going down the highway in Hale County one day, and this farmer had to rake out all these weeds so he could seine the fish. This is just a quart oil can right here. You can see how big the weed problem was. That was filamentous algae. There are different options for controlling weeds. You can use grass carp, herbicides, proper pond construction. If you have 3 feet water depth around the edges, that'll keep out a lot of rooted vegetation, because the rooted vegetation needs sunlight to grow. And if you've got deep water, they can't get sunlight to grow. Don't ever add fertilizer to a weed problem. If you've got a weed problem, you got to control the weeds before you start the fertilization program. I'll tell you a funny story about that. How am I doing on time? Who's watching my time? This farmer calls me up. He's one of these transplants in Louisiana, so he cusses like a sailor. And he calls me up and says, "Greg, I got this alligator weed problem. What do I do?" So I looked in my book and said, "Well, you got to use this chemical." And no, it wasn't. Back up, it's a different case. He says, I can't get a bloom. I can't get a bloom on my pond. What do I do? The bloom's died off about 3 or 4 days ago, and it's brown water. I got to get a bloom back because I'm running my aerators too much, and I need to get some algae going. I said, well, Charles, you can use about 15 pounds of ammonium nitrate per acre, and that should stimulate it. And I said, do that 2 or 3 times, you should get a good bloom going. Well, he calls me up about 4 weeks after that, and he says, Greg, you got to get out here. You can't believe what's going on. You won't believe this when you get out here. Okay, Charles, I'm on the way. I get down there, and his pond is just choked with alligator weed. I mean, you can't even see the water, all right? And I said, Charles, did you have this alligator weed on that pond when I called you up about the ammonia? He says, yeah. Well, you should have told me you had a weed problem. I didn't know that. So from now on, when I make a recommendation like that, I go out and make a pond visit. I don't do the phone call thing. Okay, if you have weeds, you can take your weed sample to your county agent, and your county agent knows how to get a hold of me, and he'll send a digital photo of that weed to me. Or you can do it yourself if you're set up to do that, and we'll try to identify that weed for you off a photograph and get you fixed up. Next slide. Stocking the right fish. You want to eliminate any trash fish being green sunfish, bullheads, and common carp. I don't like to put crappies in small ponds. The reason for that is the bass and brim mixture works really good, because brim, sunfish, and shellcrackers, they breed all summer long, and they're providing forage to fingerling bass all summer long. Crappies are kind of like bass. They have a very specific spawning time, so they're not a good forage base. So if you put crappies in the pond, the crappies are going to end up competing with the brim, so you're going to hurt your brim populations. And when the crappies get big, they're going to compete with your yearling bass, and so they're going to hurt your bass population. I was taught at Fisheries at Auburn not to recommend stocking crappie unless the landowner had 50 acres or more. Okay, less than that, you're probably going to mess the system up. Hybrid brim are not a good idea, because hybrid brim don't stay hybrid very long. They only stay hybrids for 1 generation, and then they revert back to the original cross, which is going to be a red ear and a green sunfish. Okay, If you have a half-acre pond, hybrid brim would be great because you can feed them and get some big brim. But for bigger ponds, I don't recommend hybrid brim because they're not sterile. Channel catfish are good. I like channel catfish in the pond because the kids can usually catch catfish. You should don't stock more than 200 catfish to the acre. And when you buy fish for stocking, the proper ratio is 100 bass to 1,000 brim. And the brim can be made up of a mixture of shell crackers or bluegills. Next slide. The Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, they don't stock farm ponds anymore. All they do is stock their public lakes. We now have private fish hatcheries that stock private farm ponds. And if you call the county agent up or call me up, I can give you a list of names to buy fish from. The DCNR still does pond balance checks, but you've got to make an application for this service. What they'll do, they'll send a biologist out with like a 15-foot minnow seine, and they'll seine just edges of the pond, and basically what they're looking for are young of the year bass and young of the year bluegills. If you've got both, things are pretty balanced. Beware of the fishmongers from Arkansas. These are the guys that show up at the post office with fish on board, and most of the time the fish are going to be sick. You just don't have good luck with the Arkansas fishmongers. Next slide. Muddy water. You get lots of muddy water. You have several causes. You can have an eroding watershed. The watershed needs to be a pasture type thing. Cows will get in there. I worked a case last month where 3 dead cows were in a half-acre pond. I can't believe cows are that stupid. They followed one after another into the pond and died in the pond. And the farmer, and the reason why I was there is the farmer said, I'm tired of losing these cows. I need you to get your GPS out and mark where my wells are, and I'm just going to bulldoze this pond out of here. And so he wanted to be able to find his wells afterwards with the GPS readings. See, the water chemistry, sometimes your water chemistry can be wrong and it doesn't allow the mud to settle out. And so if you send me a 5-gallon bucket of your pond water, we'll play with that water and figure out the solution. Sometimes you can use lime and it will settle out the mud. So improve your watershed, fence off the cows. The reason why I put goats up there is goats hate to get wet. I used to raise goats. They will not get near water. And send a bucket of pond water to me. Next slide. Fish kills. Get a lot of fish kill calls. Maintain that 18, 24 inches of visibility. If you're really proud of your fish, I mean, if losing your fish would really be a heartache to you, you need to get a destratifier. And you only need about a 1/4 horsepower, a 1/2 horsepower pump in the deep part of the pond, and keep that water mixed up top to bottom. Those of you who've ever been swimming in the middle of summertime and you dive into the water, you know the water's cold on the bottom, right? Well, that cold water way in the bottom of that pond does not have any oxygen in it. And most of the volume in your pond is going to be that cold water. And so what happens is you get a thunderstorm that comes up and it dumps about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of cold rain on that warm layer of water, and it cools that warm layer down where the whole pond flips. The water volume just flips upside down, and all of a sudden all that unoxygenated water mixes with that shallow layer of oxygenated water, and the fish suffocate. And you can avoid that by just destratifying and keeping that layer broke up. If you have fish diseases, if your bluegill or bass are sick or dying, you can contact me at the Fish Farming Center, and we'll diagnose it for you. Fire ants. Sometimes you'll get a rainstorm, and the rain will flush in the fire ants, and the brim will actually eat the fire ants, and they'll die from that. I get a lot of these calls about, oh, my fish died, I think my neighbor did it. My neighbor put something in the pond. Or the county comes by with their spray truck, and they spraying the weeds along the highway, and it rains the next day, and the herbicides washing the pond and kill the fish. I'm sorry, folks, but most herbicides won't kill fish. It's usually going to be a fish kill from a natural cause or something like that. But I've never had a case in 23 years where the county was responsible for killing fish. All right, any questions?